the Nonprofit Podcast, powered by Donorbox.
Whether you're a seasoned nonprofit leader, a budding podcaster, or simply someone passionate about creating positive change, this episode is crafted with you in mind. Welcome to the Nonprofit Podcast. I'm Jenna, nonprofit advocate here at Donorbox.
And I'm Kara, a nonprofit leader and fundraiser, and I have the honor of serving as podcast correspondent for Donorbox.
We are here each week with practical actions you can use today to increase donations and take your nonprofit to the next level tomorrow. But today is not your average episode. Nope, we have a special celebration. We are throwing a podcasting party.
You got that right, Jenna. Today marks a big milestone, our 100th episode. Can you believe it, Jenna? 100 episodes.
I know. I can't believe I've managed to keep up with you for 100 episodes, Sarah. And I really can't believe how far we've come. But we are not just basking in the glow of these 100 episodes today. We want to take our listeners behind the scenes, lift the curtain a bit, and give them a backstage pass to the Nonprofit Podcast.
Backstage pass. That's what everyone wants, right? 100 times we have come together to share actionable insights, amplify impactful stories, and navigate the dynamic world of nonprofits. So I am so excited about today. Let's do it.
Let's jump in. Yeah.
You know, recording a podcast is just so glamorous. I have a microphone and my laptop, and I take it into my husband's small walk-in closet. The acoustics in there are fairly decent because of the hanging clothes. So I push his shirts to the side and I just hit record. However, there is no airflow in there. There are no ducts for heating or cooling. And I recorded an episode this past Thanksgiving with an amazing group of individuals in Africa, Global Sojourns Giving Circle. And we were just all enjoying the conversation so much that it just kept going. You know, we try to keep our episodes short, 20 minutes or less, but this one was going on an hour or so at that point, and I was running out of air. And it's so good that we mostly keep them short because it's important to our listeners. It's important to my airflow in the closet, right?
Oh, yes. The glamorous life of podcasting. I record most of my episodes sitting on the floor, so I feel you, Kara. But you know what? Those are the moments that make it real, right? So speaking of real moments, I wanted to share some of our favorite mic drop moments from the podcast. So take a listen.
Otherwise, you might just feel limited to your normal impact numbers or your normal things that you're used to writing in your grant reports, just like your normal numbers, how the program was, how many people attended. But if you have a culture of storytelling built at your organization, people are going to be more in tune to, oh, your impact numbers, those are informed by actual people who actually are getting the good stuff out of your programs. And what are they saying about it? What do they love about it?
That was episode 84 with Carly Euler from Memory Fox. I loved our conversation so much about storytelling strategies. Carly's emphasis on authenticity and cultivating that culture of storytelling is such a gem. It's just like the beating heart of any nonprofit. Then there's episode 75 with Zach Tanasalenko. His wisdom for nonprofit startups really hit home.
In communication as a founder is critical. When you talk to people online or offline, you have to be able to present that vision in such a strong and visceral way where people say, listen, you don't have the data, the track record. I get that you're just getting started, but this is something that I want to invest in. Your early donors are your investors in a nonprofit organization, and investors buy into the vision of the world that you're trying to create, right?
Zach nailed it. Turning passion into a compelling narrative is a game changer for any organization. And one more, how about this throwback to episode 48, where Kara shared this nugget of wisdom.
But here is my pro tip for communication. Don't overthink it, not for a minute. You don't have to be a communications expert. You really just need to do two things. First, have a plan, and second, put that plan into a cadence that makes your outbound communication easy to deliver and easy to keep up with for your organization. And it makes it easy for your audience to want to get engaged too.
Kara, this was your first introduction of the 5 A's of awesome fundraising, and your advice always puts me in the exact right headspace.
Oh, that's so kind of you, Jenna. Thank you. And those were some great moments for sure. I have a few queued up as well. Working backward, I loved my recent conversation with Dr. Chris Lambert, who's the author of Next Level Nonprofit. I love to learn more about applying business principles to the nonprofit space, and he is an expert. I've used his advice more than once, and it's really making a difference.
Well, in my experience, almost every nonprofit leader I know believes that the people they serve deserve the highest level of excellence they can possibly give them. The challenge is most of us as nonprofit leaders and organizations, we're so outwardly focused that we're not investing the time and resources on our inward internal systems that will actually ensure much greater impact and far greater reach. And so we're not able to have the impact and the reach that we know that we're truly destined for or are capable for.
Oh, that's so powerful. Okay, what else? Anything else that stands out to you, Kara?
Oh, yeah, for sure. Board member engagement is always a big headache for maybe every nonprofit. And I had a really great conversation with Adam Morgan this past fall and asked him his thoughts on getting board members involved in fundraising. And he had some great solutions. Here's one that really stands out to me.
Okay, big question. We always get something like this. Nonprofits have limited resources, right? There's never enough time, never enough money. What's your advice on where to start with board engagement if you're starting from scratch?
Great question. And I think the board should be a force multiplier for your organization. If you're a small organization, 1 or 2 people or 1 or 2 fundraisers only, let's look at how we can leverage that board to work for you in this case. Some ways you can do that. We talked about matching gifts. We're about to go into Giving Tuesday and giving season and end of year fundraising. So have board members not given yet, or did they give back in January and maybe it's time to ask for a second gift, and maybe we want to do this campaign in the next 2 weeks. You say, we would like a commitment and we're going to create a matching gift. We're going to use that to incentivize Giving Tuesday through the end of the year. We talked about new prospects. This is a great time. Do this now so that you can use this information over the next 2 months. Ask for a handful of names, 3 to 5 names. Get their phone numbers and email addresses at a minimum, and ask for names of people that they think might be interested in supporting the organization, right? You don't want just like any name that they have. If there's a connection there, that's going to be better, and that's fine. And then ask if they can make those asks themselves. What do they need to be comfortable to do that? Is it email template, social media post, phone call script, writing a letter and having them sign it and then mail it? So there are ways that we can make it easy for the board members to ask. I did air quotes there, but make it comfortable and in their comfort level. Mm-hmm. But we already talked about thanking. That is huge. If a donor is thanked promptly and appropriately, they are more likely to become a forever donor or a multiple year donor or a multiple month donor. And so it's always about thanking them for the gift, but also knowing that thank you can have genuine and real return.
I value donor stewardship so much. So our episodes on donor acknowledgements and pitfalls of poor stewardship are definitely timeless.
For sure. And we have several of those. Stewardship is probably my favorite topic. It's cost effective and really moves the needle for so many organizations. So that's why I think it's so important. But you know what topic really grabbed listeners' attention this year end? Donorbox's content marketing manager, Kara Schmid, the other Kara on our team, joined us to help understand how email campaigns can maximize impact and minimize stress. She had so many excellent tips that I put into practice myself and had a great year end.
Content is truly where that magic really happens. So take the best elements of that appeal letter and rework them into your email appeal. You don't have to start from scratch. You can use that same golden thread message, that same beneficiary story that you used in that appeal, and adapt it for email. And that also means you can adapt it for social posts. Again, I know today's focused on email, so we'll stick with that. But do remember that consistency is essential. So not only are you not having to do extra work by coming up with this new message, you're you're actually helping your campaign because your donors are seeing the same message from different angles, so that it's going to resonate more. The more times they see it, those additional touch points, you're really going to hit that message home.
Right. So the more times they see it, the more they're inspired to take action. Sometimes it takes 7, 10, 12 touches,
Right.
touch points to see before they actually decide to give.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. An email can be one of those or several of those touch points.
See, wasn't that great?
Oh, yeah, for sure. I love that one.
And any episode I have with you, Jenna, is absolutely my favorite. I value your insight and our time together so much, for sure.
Well, we are so lucky to have had so many great guests on the podcast so far. And of course, having you as my podcast partner, Kara, has just made this journey even better.
So let's rewind a bit back to the early days when we were just starting the nonprofit podcast. We were a little unsure of which buttons to push and how to make our voices sound, well, streaming ready. You know, diving into podcasting can be daunting, especially for nonprofits who are considering this medium. But let me tell you, the value it brings is immeasurable. Podcasting becomes a powerful tool for nonprofits to amplify their message, connect with their audience on a deeper level, and really create a sense of community.
I absolutely agree. I think that podcasting provides a unique platform to share stories, insights, and the heart behind the mission.
Yeah.
And it can really allow nonprofits to reach a wider audience and engage their supporters in meaningful conversations and ultimately make that impact stand out even more.
So for those who might be hesitating to take the plunge into podcasting, let our journey be an encouragement. We started with a lot of uncertainties, but every stumbling block became a stepping stone. And the authenticity, the realness, the raw moments, they all contribute to the richness of the podcasting experience. I know I learned from every single mistake. And so remember, it's not about having a perfect start. It's about starting with purpose. Whether you're a nonprofit leader, a fundraiser, or someone just passionate about your cause, your voice matters. And podcasting is a fantastic way to amplify it.
Honestly, I remember feeling like we had little to no idea of what we were doing, Kara, when we first started the nonprofit podcast. We didn't know which microphones to use, and the editing software looked like a mix between like a control panel for a spaceship and some sort of super complicated board game. And I just remember staring at a sea of all the options online, both of us feeling like we needed like a PhD in like audio engineering just to make a decision.
For sure. And, you know, the first time we hit record, to me, it was like launching a rocket. We kind of fumbled through our thoughts. We tripped over our words. We still do. And we realized that editing was going to be our new best friend. But hey, here we are 100 episodes later, and that's just the start, I think.
I think so, too.
Let's talk a second about our audience. Knowing how to find them and then get in front of them through podcasting is definitely a challenge.
That's so true. We definitely, I think at the beginning, asked ourselves a lot, who are we talking to? Where are they hanging out? What keeps them up at night, right? It was definitely like playing a detective game.
And you know what? I guess we're going to go there. What cracked the case wide open? Well, it was taking a podcasting coaching course. We spent some time with podcast performance coach Tim Wahlberg, and he has some great podcast advice for new podcasters. And he has this 5-minute podcast that really helps teach the ins and outs of podcasting. And I know we learned so much from him. And he was able to really clarify everything for us. So goals, helping us find a niche in podcasting, helping us identify who our target audience might be. And then we use that to restructure the show a bit, define our promise to our listeners. We did a lot of homework and a lot of reflection. And so it all started falling into place after that. That was so valuable.
The deep dive that coaching took us on was definitely a game changer. But I want to be real. Not everyone can, just drop into a coaching course. I don't want to gloss over that. We definitely had some corporate privileges, I guess, the budget, the resources, the support, but it really made a big difference. And I do love listening to his podcast, those bite-sized bits of wisdom that can really help you along the way.
And that's free.
It's free, exactly. So, Kara, you and I have a few of our own tips and insights to share with our listeners, don't we?
We sure do. And I think we can boil it down to 3 things. First and foremost, know your listener inside out. Picture them, understand their challenges, understand their aspirations. What are the questions that keep them up at night? Your podcast is a conversation, not a monologue. So tailor your content to resonate with what your audience is going through at the time, and talk to your audience as if you're chatting over a cup of coffee.
And I'll add to that, I think that authenticity is definitely the secret weapon here. Don't try to be something you're not. Let your passion and genuine self really shine through. Authenticity builds trust. And in the nonprofit world, trust is your strongest currency, right? So share your stories, your insights, and your struggles openly, right? It doesn't have to be all butterflies and rainbows. And your audience will really connect with you and your mission.
And I'd say our final tip is the unsung hero of podcasting, and that is editing. Spending time refining your episodes is where the real magic happens. It's not about perfection. It's about ensuring your message is clear and engaging. Edit out the unnecessary, enhance the impactful, craft an experience your listeners won't want to miss. Sometimes the raw product of our podcast is really, really rough, and there's lots of bloopers and mistakes on the cutting room floor every single episode.
I think that's a really good tip, and something that we always teach our nonprofits is how to have clear, concise, and compelling messaging through all of their communications. And podcasting is a part of that. So I absolutely agree on the editing. And I would say that those are definitely our official podcasting tips. But I know that we have some unofficial, maybe not quite as helpful, but I think so, podcasting tips as well. So here are a couple of my learnings. You know those moments when you're full after a big lunch and that afternoon slump really hits you hard?
Oh, yeah.
Well, I'd say that, well, I guess Kara and I's unofficial tip is never hit record right after lunch. That battle against that post-lunch lethargy sometimes spirals into hilarious delirium with Kara and I.
Yeah.
Even when we hit record on this podcast today, Kara said, nope, redo it, girl. That wasn't peppy enough. So here we are. So there have been times where we've listened back and we thought, did we just record a Seriously Dry skit from SNL? What just happened? But it's really a small detail. The timing really makes a big difference when you're recording.
Oh, for sure. Absolutely. That post-lunch recording is, it's always an adventure. Why do we even do that to ourselves? We're doing it right now, right after lunch.
Yeah, I don't know. Okay, now this one is a big one for me. One of the personal challenges that I've faced when starting this podcast was dealing with imposter syndrome. There were moments when I questioned if anyone would want to learn from me. I was like having a little tiny podcast critic in my head saying, are you even qualified for this? What are you doing? And it really took time to trust my unique authority and recognize the value that I could offer on the podcast next to Kara. And I really learned to stick with what I know, tap into the brilliance of others, like our guests and our fellow Donorbox folks when needed, and then really embrace that authenticity. So going back to that tip earlier, and I hope that this really resonates with our listeners who might be going through something similar when they're thinking about starting this type of adventure.
It's so common. And for many of us across the field and everything, we all have a little bit of imposter syndrome sometimes, or fear, just blatant fear that stops us from doing what we want to do. But I think being open about it, talking to someone who can maybe hold you accountable and encourage you really helps navigate those feelings. And I think it would help others navigate those feelings too. For me, when we started, I was so nervous about making conversation or remarks about a guest's thoughts that my head was already busy going to the end of their comment, and I wasn't completely listening to what was coming out of their mouth. And so I realized that our listeners tune in to hear the guest, not me. So I learned quickly to just keep the questions coming. I don't really have to make conversation at every time a guest has a nice, thorough thought. I just thought, leave their thoughts as they are and jump right into the next question. We can cover a lot more ground in a lot less time.
That's a really good one. Going with the flow there really makes a big difference.
Jenna, I love being alongside you in the nonprofit podcast, but we are not just a party of two, are we?
No, we are not. We've got some really incredible people behind the scenes of the nonprofit podcast. Stefan, our sound engineer, deserves a huge kudos for making our audio sound top-notch every single episode, working with our closets and our funny mics every single week. So we really appreciate him. And our amazing producer, Joe, inspires us, keeps us on track
Joanne.
Week after week. And it makes it all come together. We really appreciate her more than words can even express. She's just the best.
She is. And the Donorbox team, is also truly remarkable in my opinion. I've really enjoyed Lindsay's insights and Kara's too, the other Kara. Bobby Joe always knows what works for donation forms, and those episodes are always really popular. And Britt is new to the podcast team, but she has some great insights on nonprofit strategy, and there's more ahead from each of those people throughout this next year, right, Jenna?
That's right. The year ahead will be filled with lots of practical actions, as we promise. I'll be hosting, and Kara, you'll be our roving reporter. That sounds so catchy. You'll be our roving reporter, reporting on what you're learning and how you're inspired as a frontline fundraiser. We'll have more of our experts along throughout the fundraising seasons this year to make sure that all of our listeners have the info they need when they need it most.
Jenna, it is always so great to celebrate with you. Thank you for including me this week.
Thanks for being here, Kara. And here's to many more episodes and celebrations together.
Cheers.
And thank you, our listeners, for choosing to spend your time today with the Nonprofit Podcast. I hope you've left with the confidence to take a small step today that will make a big difference tomorrow. Be sure to click the download button on your podcast player, then leave the Nonprofit Podcast a review, or give it a thumbs up if you're listening to the Nonprofit Podcast on YouTube. Your review is really a great way to help others find us. You're here to help others. We're here to help you. Until next time, stay inspired.
That warm feeling when you help someone, it's not just happiness, it's fulfillment. And we believe it should be available to everyone, from frontline heroes to first-time fundraisers. Our tools empower you to help others. This is our mission. This is Donorbox, helping you help others.